Hey everyone, welcome to today's code challenge. Our question for today is simple. Given an array of integers, reorder its entries so that the even entries appear first. So here we go. We have an array of numbers, as you can see from the screen. There. Our goal is to move numbers 2, 26 in no specific order, all to the beginning of this array. And so here's how we're going to solve this. And I want to basically show you the algorithm or the pseudocode before we actually write any code. Okay, so here's how we solve this particular problem. We have an array, and let's just number the indexes of this array, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we'll declare two variables. The first one called next even, and we'll set this to 0, and then the next variable we'll declare is next odd, and we will declare this to 5. So these two variables, next even and next odd, they are actually going to define the boundaries of our array. And so the first element over here, 83, what we're going to do as we iterate through is we're going to test to see if this is even or not. If it is even, we're going to increase the counter of our next even variable to 1. And if it is not, then we will swap out 83 and 5. So for our first iteration, after we passed through, you notice that 83 was not even, so essentially we just swap them out, and then we would, in the next pass, decrease the next odd counter to 4. What this is doing is basically creating kind of like 3 virtual sub-arrays. So we have an even array and an odd array, and we are using the existing array which was originally given to us to take elements and then place them in their respective subarray. So if it's 2, place it in the even subarray. If it's odd, then place it in the odd subarray. So let's go to the next iteration and see. Right, so in the next iteration, you'll notice that the next odd has been decreased, right, to 4. And so what we're going to do now is to test next even, which is the element 6, and then 5, and then we'll do the same swap out depending on whether it passed the test or not. So eventually we will come to what will look like this. So you'll notice that 6, 20, and 2 are all even numbers, and they begin the array. So let's take a look and dive into code to see how we can code this out. Okay, so I've set up a simple class in Java to illustrate how we're going to write this program. So in my class called reorder even elements, I have a main method which I'm going to use to call this particular method called reorder even numbers. So per best practices, what I'm actually going to start off by doing is to write a unit test, and that should all be failing. So let's put something in here. Let's create this, get rid of that message. Okay, so I will put an input array here. And I will put the same numbers that were inside of the array which we looked at, 5, 1, and then 2, 20, 6, and 5. Okay, so next I'm going to actually call that method reorder even elements dot reorder, and then I'm passing the input array. So we are going to assert equals that input array, the first element should be 6. Actually, the first element, which is 0, this should be 6. I'm going to duplicate this line of code, and then 1 should be 20, and then 2 should be, I believe it's 2. I'll save that, and I'll quickly run this unit test. It should fail. Perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for. So once we are able to complete the details of this method, this unit test should pass. So let's come in here and actually build this out. So we will start off by declaring next even. We'll set this to be 0, and in Java we can do this. Next odd is equals to the length of our array, which is unordered numbers dot length minus 1. All right. While next even is less than next odd. What we will say is we'll do our check for if unordered numbers, then next even. So this is to check if the first element, or whatever element is at the beginning of our array, is even or not. So we're going to do a simple modulus operation and see if the remainder is 0. Then we know that this is true. So if it is an even number, then we will increase the counter for this so it moves on to the next element. Else we are going to do some swapping. So we'll create a temporary variable unordered numbers next even. So we'll place that number inside of a temporary value. We will then copy the value from the end of the array into the next even. So we'll call this next odd. All right. And then we will copy this back into its original location, decreasing the value by 1. So next odd. And then we will do that equals to temp. Okay, so at this point, this should have swapped the elements. And that's basically all that we need for this method. Let's save that. So now we have this method complete. We can go back to our unit test and let's run this to see if the method does what we intend it to do, that is swap out all of the elements which are even to the beginning. And there you go. Our unit tests are now passing, and our reorder even numbers method is complete.